Okay, Rabbi Isai, we're going to get started now. We're on the last line of Mem Gimel Amud Beis. The Mishnah yesterday had said that according to Rabbi Yossi, when you want, there's a mitzvah to dispose of avodah zarah. So how do you dispose of it? Because you're not allowed to get any hana from it. So Rabbi Yossi says, shochek v'zora l'ruach. Grind it up and scatter it into the wind, or throw it into the ocean. The Chachamim objected to this. What was the Chachamim's objection? They said, Afu nasa zevel. That could become, if you scatter something that's made out of earthenware or even metal, and you scatter it onto the soil, it could actually act as a fertilizer for the soil, and you're getting hana from it. And it seems like from Rashi that even if you throw it into a riverbed or some other body of water where flora can grow on the bottom, so then that also is acting as a fertilizer as well. So the Gemara now says, let's continue this debate between Rabbi Yossi and the Chachamim. Tanya, Amar lahem Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi's response to that is, V'alo kfar nemar ve'eschataschem asher asisem es ha'egel, lakachti vo'esrof oso ba'esh, vo'ekos oso tachon heitev ad asher dak le'afar, vo'ashlichas afar el hanachal ha'yirid nahar. Moshe Rabbeinu, in describing the aftermath of the Chet HaEgel, which we're going to read about in this week's Parsha, says that I took the Egel, I ground it up into a dust, and I threw it into the brook that runs from the mountain. So you see, that's how he disposed of it. So Amrulo...
It was obviously a temporary brook, right?
I don't know.
Mount Sinai, in the middle of the Sinai Desert, they had a brook?
I have no idea. It's probably not there anymore, but maybe it was there. You know, bodies of water channels change all the time. So Amru lo misham raya, harehu omer vayizer al pinei hamayim vayashkes pinei Yisrael lo niskavin el labotkan kesotos. So the Chachamim say back to him, that wasn't Moshe disposing of the idolatry. What did he do? He poured the dust of the egel into the water, combined it with the water, then scooped it all back up. There was no residue that he left in the water. He did it because he wanted to force everyone to drink from it in order to test which ones had committed idolatry. This water mixed with the dust of the egel worked like sota water, that whoever, everyone drank from it, and whoever was sinful died as a result. So Moshe wasn't disposing of the egel. He was using it as sota water. So Amar lahem Rabbi Yossi v'alo kfar nemar. So, but look, there's another episode in Tanakh. Now this is from the times of the Malachim, and it's talking about King Asa, whose mother was steeped in idolatry, but he was able to remove the idolatry that his mother had originally instituted. The pasuk says, "V'gamacha em Asa hamelech." Hisira migavira asher asasala ashera mifletzes. That Ma'acha, the mother of Asa, removed from her idolatry that she had made for Asherah, she removed the mifletzes. Now the mifletzes is a certain kind of idol, which the Gemara will describe in a moment. Vayichros Asa es miflatzta, vayodek vayisrof benachal Kidron. And he ground up this mifletzes idolatry into a powder, and he burned it in Nachal Kidron, which either means he burnt it into ash and then ground it up and threw it into Nachal Kidron. But the point is that too is being made into a fertilizer. So Vayodek Vayis, right? So Amrulo Misham Raya Nachal Kidron Ein Megadel Tzmachin. So they said back to him, that's not a problem, because we know that the Kidron Wadi does not produce any flora and will not produce it, therefore it could not have been used as fertilizer because nothing grows in the Nachal Kidron. So the Gemara says, Velo, is that really so? V'hatanya, elu ve'elu misarvin ba'ama ve'yotzim le'Nachal Kidron v'nimkarin leganonim lezevel u'mo'alin bahen. But the Gemara says, now wait a minute. How can you tell me that the Nachal Kidron does not produce any flora? And it doesn't, I'll show you that that's not the case. That the blood of the sacrifices, both the blood that is sprinkled on the inner altar and the blood that is sprinkled on the outer altar, whatever remnant of that blood is poured into something called the Amma, which is an aqueduct that is runs through the center of the temple floor and flows westward out of the temple. And what we learn is that that water flows into the Kidron brook, and it would flow downstream, and they would trap all of the blood product, the coagulated blood product that would accumulate in the Kidron stream, and they would sell it to farmers to act as fertilizer. In other words, after it had undergone this transformation of coagulating, they would sell it. And the Mishnah over there says that even though there's no liability for me'ila, technically, midioraisa, for a byproduct of the carbon, but the Rabbanan said that if you don't pay for it, you're committing a pseudo act of me'ila. And therefore, they required you to, if you wanted to use that blood product, you had to actually pay the Beis HaMikdash for it.
They made a few bucks on it.
They made a few bucks on it. But the point is that you see that you could harvest fertilizer from the Kidron stream. So how can you tell me that pouring this ground up ash from the Mifletzis idolatry is not a problem? Clearly it could be used for fertilizer. So the Gemara answers, Mekomos Yeshbo. Yesh makom megadel tzmachim, v'yesh makom she'ein megadel tzmachim. So the Gemara's conclusion, this is the way at least I'm understanding it, is that it depends where you dispose of the item in the Kidron River or the Kidron stream. There are certain parts of the stream where you could actually accumulate fertilizer waste and extract it from the stream. But there are other places, perhaps further downstream, where it's not, you can't harvest it out.
They're not talking about the stream, they're talking about growing in the valley, whether you can grow there.
Right.
That's the way I read it.
Well, no, but
So parts of the Kidron Valley are fertile, but parts of it are not.
So yeah, but the point is that if they're pulling it out of the stream, so you have to say, in other words, in the case of the Beis HaMikdash blood products, they're pulling it out of the stream. Mm-hmm. So the only way they could pull it, so why are they pulling it out of the stream? So the farmers can take it and fertilize their fields. So you have to say that there are parts of this Kidron Valley where the stream is, where you can't even extract it. Mm. That's the way I'm understanding, because otherwise if you could extract it, then it's a problem. But the point is that Asa disposed of it in a place where it was difficult to extract it or was impossible to extract it from the stream, and therefore he was disposing of it properly. So now the Gemara says, Mai miflatzta. What does the pasuk mean when it says that his mother had made a mifletzes avodah zarah? What does that word even mean? So Amar Rav Yehuda dahava mifalia leitzanusa. It's a contraction of two words. From the word pele, it was a wondrous or amazing act of leitzanus, act of debauchery, is the way I would explain leitzanus in this context. Kiritani Rav Yosef kimin zachrus asasala v'haisa nivelis lo b'chol yom. That what his mother did was that she was so steeped in idolatry that she made carved a phallus on this idolatry, and she used it. You'll forgive the term. She masturbated on it on a daily basis to show her devotion to the idolatry. Amar lahen Reb Yossi v'alo kvar nemar v'chasas nechash nechoshes asher asa Moshe. So now Reb Yossi continues in his line of challenge. Reb Yossi is still of the opinion that by grinding it into a dust, and throwing it into the wind or into the water, it's perfectly okay. And he says, I'll prove it to you from another source. King Chizkiyahu, in his time, he abolished a lot of idolatry. And one of the things he abolished is that Moshe had fashioned this caduceus. If you remember, this copper serpent on a staff, which anyone who looked at would miraculously be healed. But Chizkiyahu still had that caduceus, and he destroyed it by grinding it up into powder, presumably because people had turned that caduceus into a form of idolatry. So you see from here that you can take idolatry and ground it up, and that's a good way of disposing of it.
On that note, it's interesting that God even let Moses make it in the first place.
Yeah, and that's in itself a question, but that's not for now. So Amru lo misham raya harehu omer vayomer Hashem el Moshe asay lecha saraf lecha mishalcha ve'ein adam oser davar she'eno shalo. So they said to him, that's not a good proof. There's no way that the Kedusis could have been an actual idolatry. How do I know that? Because Hashem told Moshe, make it for yourself, meaning that it was Moshe's personal property. And I can't go over to someone else's property and designate it as idolatry and prohibit it. Like, let's say I want to worship a coat hanger. I can't go over to your coat hanger and say, oh, I hereby make you into a deity. You can't do that. It's someone's private property. So there's no way you could prohibit it. So there's no way that the Kedusis could have been prohibited because of idolatry. So then why taka did he grind it up? V'hasam bedinhu de kesuse lo havetzarech elakevin dechazet dekato Yisrael basrei amad v'kisaso. So the reason is not because it was idolatry, but rather because he noted that the Jews of the time were not calling out to Hashem when they got sick. All they would do is go to the Kedusis, and therefore they were losing their connection with the Ribbono Shel Olam. And that's why he ground it up. Amar lahem v'lo kfar nemar vayazvu shames atzabeim vayisaim David va'anashav. But what about another pasuk? This from Sefer Shmuel. It says that when David went to war against the Philistines and he vanquished them, it says that the Philistines forsook their idolatry, and David and his men were vayisaum, which, as the Gemara will demonstrate in a second, either means lifting up or it means scattering. So, umay mashma dahai vayisaum David va'anashav lishna dezeru yehu. How do you know that it means that they scattered it, which means presumably they ground it up and scattered it about? Kidemitargim Rav Yosef tizareim v'ruach tisaim. He says, based on the way that Rav Yosef translates this pasuk in Yeshaya, which says, you shall scatter them and the wind shall carry them away. Umitargaminon tizarinun v'ruach titaltalinun. That's exactly how it's translated. So you see that the word vayisaim means to be carried away by the wind. So the only way that could happen is if David HaMelech broke it down into powder and scattered it into the wind to dispose of it. So you see that is the proper way of disposing of idolatry. Amru lo misham raya harehu omer vayisrafu bo'esh umidalo kesiv vayisrafeim vayisaim shma mina vayisaim mamish. So 1 second, the Gemara says no, because as you know, there are many psukim in Divrei Hayamim that are almost repeats or reruns of the account of Sefer Shmuel. And here's a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim which recounts that story of King David and the idolatry of the Philistines. And in that retelling, all it says is that Vayisrafu ba'esh, they burned it in fire. But it doesn't say Vayisaim, that it was scattered in the wind. So therefore you see that that's not what David did. David did not scatter the idolatry into the wind. All he did was that he ignited the idolatry when it was intact to show that he was belittling it. And then he took it away so that they could use the charred remains for whatever purposes they needed it for. Now, of course, the question is, how could that be? If it's idolatry, how can you do that? You're not allowed to benefit from it. And also, how do you reconcile the contradiction? The pasuk in Shmuel says that they scattered it, and here the pasuk in Divrei Yomim says that they just burned it without scattering it. Mikol makom kashu kroya adadi. That's the Gemara's question. How do you reconcile the contradiction? So the Gemara answers K'der Rav Huna. The Rav Huna Ramik siv vayomer David vayisrafu ba'esh siv vayisaum lo kasha kan koidem shaba itai hagiti kan la'acher shaba itai hagiti. So the Gemara answers that there were 2 stages in this process. David had defeated the Philistines, and he was about to destroy the idolatry because he felt it was forbidden, and he was going to break it down, and he was going to scatter it, and he was going to break it down into powder. But Itai Hagiti came along, and he nullified the idolatry. Now, we'll learn later on that how do you nullify an idolatry? Number 1, it has to be done by the idolater himself. Mm-hmm. And number 2, he's got to, in some way, deface the idolatry. So Itai Hagiti came along and defaced the idolatry.
This guy defected to the Jewish camp, apparently.
Apparently he defected to the Jewish camp. So, and then Vayisaim doesn't mean that he scattered it. Vayisaim means they carried it off and took it home with them. Yeah. And that's what happened. Originally, David was not going to keep it. He was just going to burn it and then just leave it. But then Itai Hagiti came along and allowed them now to get benefit from it because the idolatry was nisbatel. It was defaced and and removed from its status. And I'll prove it to you from another text. Later on in that same Sefer, it says that King David, from the spoils of an idolatrous kingdom, took the crown of Malkam, which was the name of their idolatry. This is the Ammonites. And he took it for himself, this crown. And this crown weighed a full talent of gold. So the Gemara now says, Umi Shari Suri Hananinu. How could he do that if it's used for idolatry? It's an Isra Hana. So Amar Rav Nachman, Itai Hagiti ba ubitala. So the answer is the same answer, that Itai Hagiti came and nullified it, and thereby made it permissible. Now, Umishkala Kikar Zahav Hechi Matzi Manachla. The Gemara now says, incidentally, let's ask this question. If the crown weighed if it had 1 talent of gold in it, that's a very heavy crown. How can you wear it on your head? I mean, you're going to ask a chiropractor. What would happen, Mark, if you wore a 50?
You become visiting me.
If you wore a 50-pound crown on your head all day.
When I was in England, I read that the Queen's crown is very heavy. She can only wear it for a very short time.
Yeah, there you go. So that's the question. Yeah. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Ru'uya lanu achal rosh David. It does mean that he actually wore it, but it means, as we'll see in a second, that it had a crossbar in the crown. And your head had to be shaped a certain way so that the crossbar would fit into a ridge in your skull. The anterior fontanella of David was very pronounced. So they could put it in that ridge in his skull and it would rest. And as we'll see, that's a feature of the Davidic dynasty. Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina Amar, Even sho'eves haisaba dahavas dorala. He gives a totally different answer. He says there was a magnet embedded in the crown, and there was another magnet in the ceiling where David's throne was. Very powerful magnets. So it suspended the crown so that when David would wear it, the weight would not bear down on him.
Wow.
That's a very creative answer, right? Boy, I'll tell you. There are a lot of things you can do with magnets even today that are... What? No, that's why I said there was a magnet embedded in the crown. In other words, I don't think that gold is magnetic.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Rabbi Elazar Amar Even Yakara Haisaba Sheshava Kikar Zahav. Rabbi Elazar says, no, you got it the whole thing wrong. It didn't weigh 1 talent of gold. It was not 1 talent of gold. It was a much lighter crown, but there was a stone in the crown that was worth a talent of gold. Okay, next. Zos Haisaliki Fikudecha Natsarti. So the pasuk says, I got this, or this happened to me because I observed your commandments. And the Gemara says that this is related to David's zechus of wearing this very expensive crown. My kamer, what is he saying? Hachi kamer, bischar pikudecha natzarti, zos ha'isali le'edus. That because I always observed your commandments, this crown is the testimony that I am one of your deserving ones. So my edusa, what is its testimony? Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, shahaya meinicha b'makom tefillin v'hol masa. That you could put this, David could wear this crown on the place of his tefillin, where the beginning of the anterior fontanelle is in a child, and it fit perfectly in this ridge that was situated towards the front part of his cranium. So the Gemara now says, but wait a minute, v'ha bo yanuche tefillin. But how could David wear the crown if that's where you're supposed to put your tefillin? So Amar Reb Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, makom yesh barosh sheroi lahaniach bo shtei tefillin. The answer is that the place in the front of your head really can accommodate 2 pairs of tefillin. Right, there are people even today, Temanim, wear 2 pairs. Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, they wear it at the same time. So David's crown went on the top part of that area, and the tefillin went below it, and therefore it worked fine. So David HaMelech, if he wore Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, he wore them one after the other, not both at the same time.
Why do you have to wear the crown and the tefillin at the same time?
I guess because the crown was for the monarchy and tefillin he wore all day, just like everyone.
Because he wore them all day.
Everyone wore tefillin all day back then. Vayotziu es ben hamelech vayinu alav es hanezer ve'es ha'edus. Now here's another pasuk. This is a pasuk by Yehoyada. And they took his son and they placed upon him the crown and the testimony. So Nezer zu kalila. So the Nezer refers to the crown. And Edus, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Edus hu lebeis David shekol aroi lamalchus hol masa v'chol she'en aroi lamalchus ein hol masa. That it was a testimony that Yehoyada was worthy of the monarchy, because anyone who was worthy of the monarchy was born with a cranium that was in the shape to be able to wear the crown, that it would fit them properly, despite that crossbar that was in the crown, because your cranium had a ridge in it. Va'adoniyav, here, you should feel your head if you feel anything lumpy. So it's a sign you're a king.
Maybe you're Mashiach.
Yeah. Va'adoniya ben chagis misnaseh lemor ani emloch. Now Adoniya, now the Gemara cites another story just to show that of the opposite, when you're not worthy. Adoniya, who is mentioned in the beginning of Sefer Malachim, he's David HaMelech's son, and right before David died, David is elderly, and Adoniyahu creates an insurrection to try and usurp the monarchy. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Shemit Nasei Laholmo V'Lohol Maso. What it means that he attempted, it means that he tried to wear the crown, but it didn't fit. Vayas lo rechav u'farashim v'chamishim ishratzim lefanav. And in order to show his royalty, he set up a chariot and riders and 50 runners in front of the chariots. Now, the Gemara says, "My ribosai, what's the big deal of putting 50 runners? Doesn't seem like a huge number. What was so special about these people?" So, Tana kulam netulei tchol v'chakuke kapos raglaim hayu. All of these runners were surgically enhanced in order to make them fast runners. They had their spleens removed, and the soft, fleshy part of their foot on the bottom of the foot was scraped off, so that when they ran, the bottom of their feet was so calloused that they would not feel any pain when they stepped on pebbles and thorns in the road. So they could run really, really fast. That was the patent, that was the whole kunz of Adoniyahu, getting these runners that they could really outpace anyone else.
Before we do the Mishnah, I have one question about that thing that you can't worship someone's private property.
Yeah.
But we've been learning for the last few weeks that if a guy makes something avodah zarah and he loses it and you find it, I mean, you have to know, you're not allowed.
Yes, because the person who made it into an avodah zarah. Here you're taking someone else's object that is private property that person did not make.
So he didn't make it.
Moshe didn't make it into an avodah zarah. So just because the people that came after him wanted it to be an avodah zarah, they didn't have the power to do that.
So private property only works avodah zarah if the guy who owned it made it avodah zarah.
That's correct. Next Mishnah. Shaul Proclus ben Philosphus es Rabbi Gamliel Ba'ako Shahayarochetz b'merchatz shel Aphrodite. So a man named Proclus ben Plosphus, there is a very famous person in secular history named Proclus. He lived in the 5th century of the Common Era, so it can't be that person because the timing is off by a few hundred years, because Rabbi Gamliel lives around shortly after the beginning of the Common Era. Depending upon which Rabbi Gamliel it is, it's either shortly before the Common Era or shortly after the Common Era. So this must be a different Proclus. It's some Roman heathen. And he asks Rabbi Gamliel in Akko the following question as they're both bathing in a bathhouse which has a statue of the goddess Aphrodite right in front of them. And he asks him, Amar lei kasu v'toraschem lo yidbak biyodchem u'ma min acherim mipnei ma torochetz b'merchatz shel Aphrodite. So he says, your Bible states that you're not allowed to have any connection at all with idolatry. So what are you doing here, man? Right? So, Amar lo, ein meshivin b'merchatz. So when Gamliel said to him, we don't answer shaylas in a bathhouse. So, right, I can't discuss this with you in a bathhouse.
Because he's naked.
Ucheshiyatza, Amar lo, ani lo basi b'gvula, hi ba'a b'gvuli. So the first answer Rabbi Gamliel gave him is, after they came out of the bathhouse, they got dressed. He said, let me explain to you why. I did not come into her turf, she came onto my turf. Explaining basically that the bathhouse was here first. This was a public bathhouse. Just because they stick up a statue of Aphrodite does not disqualify the bathhouse. Next argument he made to her was, Ein omrim nasa merchatz noi la Aphrodite, ela omrim nasa Aphrodite noi la merchatz. And furthermore, even if it was built at the same time as the statue, but the statue is an accessory to the bathhouse and not vice versa. And therefore, since the bathhouse is the main thing, the bathhouse does not disqualify because of the statue. The third thing that he said, Davar acher, im nostim lecha mamon harbe, iya tanichnas lavodas kolchavim shelcha orom, ubal keri umashtin bifaneha, zu omedes ala api abiv, lechol ha'am mashtin lefaneha. He says, and the third argument is, listen, if you have a very precious idol that you worship all the time, no matter how much money people are going to give you, you would never walk in naked in front of your idolatry when you're ritually unclean
It's not respectful.
and urinate in front of your idolatry.
Yeah.
And here's Aphrodite in the bathhouse, where there's a urinal right near her on the side of the bathhouse. Everyone's pishing into the urinal.
Everyone's naked.
Everyone's naked. This obviously cannot be meant as an avodah zarah. Lo namar ela Elohehem. Es shenoig bo mishum Eloah aser, es she'eno noig bo mishum Eloah mutter. And therefore the Torah says the only thing that's prohibited for me to be in the vicinity of is a deity, something that is deified. But they're not deifying the statue, and therefore it's perfectly permitted for me. So the Gemara now asks, Vehechi avid hachi. How could Rabbi Gamliel have even said anything in the bathhouse to this heathen? How could he even say to him the statement, we don't answer shilas in the bathhouse? V'ha'amar Rabba bar Barchana amar Rabbi Yechanan b'chol makom muter lahara chutz mi beis hamerchatz u'mi beis hakisei. We know that you're allowed to think words of Torah except in a bathhouse. So even just telling him the halacha that you're not allowed to answer shilas in a bathhouse is a violation of that halacha.
Wow.
So v'chitema b'lashon chol amar lei. Maybe you'll tell me that it's not so bad because he said it in a foreign language. As long as he don't say it in Hebrew, it's permissible. But that can't be because v'ha'amar Abaye dvarim shel chol muter la'amrin b'lashon kodesh, dvarim shel kodesh asel la'amrin b'lashon chol. Abaye is just not. It's just the opposite. That if it's mundane affairs, you can say it even in Hebrew in a bathroom, and if it's holy affairs, even in a foreign language, you're not allowed to say it. So, for example, let's say in Israel today, if two guys are taking a shower in the dormitory of the yeshiva, they can say, Ten li et hasabon b'vakasha. Even though they're speaking Hebrew,
Right.
pass the soap, please. That's perfectly okay because they're speaking about mundane affairs. It's got nothing to do with the language, it's got to do with the subject material. But if I say, can you explain to me the Gemara on daf so-and-so in the shower, that's what's, even in English, that's what's us.
I thought when you go to the bathroom, people say hello and what was doing. You're not supposed to do that.
Right, that's a separate halacha. That's not what we're talking about over here. That's a separate issue about conversing in general in a bath.
Why do Charedim say that Lashon HaKodesh is not supposed to be used for mundane matters when the Gemara just said it's
okay? So it's a good argument. There are additional chumras that were added on post Gemara about using Lashon HaKodesh. Anyway, Tana kishiyatza amar lo ein meshiv b'mercha. So the Gemara says we have a question. How do we answer the question? The answer is based on the brisa that Rabbi Gamliel was completely silent in the bathhouse, and it's only after they left the bathhouse Rabbi Gamliel says, "I'm sorry, I was quiet, but we don't answer shilas in the bathhouse."
He's trying to be respectful to
Right.
the guy. The guy's like, what a jerk. He didn't answer me. Yeah.
Amar Rav Chama bar Yosef, Berebi Amar Rav Oshia, Tshuva Genuva Heshiva Rabbi Gamliel la'oso hegmon, Vani Omer Eina Genuva. So Rav Chama says, my Rebbe said that Rabbi Gamliel was giving him an illegitimate answer, sort of literally like a stolen answer, meaning an answer that would just act as a deflection, but was not real in its substance. But I disagree with my Rebbe, and I say that it was a legitimate answer. Now, ma genuvte. So, what was the illegitimacy of it? Dika'amar lo zu omedes al pi abiv v'chol adam mashnim b'faneha. V'chi mashnim b'faneha my havi v'omar rava pa'or yochiach shemefarin lefanav b'chol yom ve'eno batel. He says the answer that he gave him, that everyone's urinating in front of it, shows that it's not being deified. He says that's not a legitimate answer because look, there's an idolatry called Baal Peor that people defecate, and that is a form of deification. So what's the argument that he was giving? So va'ani omer eino genu v'zu avodasa bekach v'zu ein avodasa bekach. So, but I disagree with my Rebbe, and I hold that there was a legitimate answer. The only time that defecating or urinating in front of idolatry is a form of deification is if that's the service to that idolatry. But which is Baal Peor.
Yeah.
But Aphrodite, that's not how you worship Aphrodite. Right? So therefore, urinating is demonstrating that it's not a deity. Abaya Omar Genufta Mehacha. So Abaya says, I agree that it's illegitimate, but from the following point. Because one of the arguments that Rabbi Gamliel gave to this heathen is that I didn't come on her turf, she came on my turf. But the argument, says Abai, that's not a legitimate argument, because even if the statue was there first, and they built the bathhouse afterwards, and he was coming therefore on Aphrodite's turf, it still wouldn't be a problem. Because the Mishnah says that if a bathhouse is built as an accessory for an idolatry, you're still allowed to take a bath in it. The only thing you're not allowed to do is worship the actual idolatry. But to do an activity in the swimming pool of the church, of the YMCA, right, is perfectly fine, as long as you don't praise the idolatry in the course of swimming in the swimming pool. So, Vani Oimer Eina Genuva, Shalo Betovas from Gamliel Ketovas Acherim Dami. So, but I argue, says Abaya, that there is still legitimacy to the answer. Because the very fact that the head of the Jewish people would come to the idolatry house to use their swimming pool would in itself be a statement of tribute to the idolatry. And therefore, Ben Gamliel's point of view was that based on my stature, if this whole pool had been built for Aphrodite, it would not be okay for me to swim in it, because that in itself would be a form of tribute.
He's being a chumrah on himself.
No,
He's the Nasi.
it's not a chumrah on himself. It's a statement of reality. A regular Jew who swims at the YMCA, he's not paying tribute. A Rosh Yeshiva, or the head of the Jewish people, the Nasi who does that, is in itself saying that the Jewish people pay tribute to Aphrodite, and that's what's usher. So therefore, he had to give the answer that this swimming pool is not for Aphrodite. It was built here first as a public pool, and then only afterwards they put the statue there. Rav Shimi Bar Chia Amar Genuf Samehacha Dekamar Lo Zu Omedes Al Aviv V'Chol Adam Mashinim B'Faneha. Rav Shimi says the illegitimacy of his answer was on the part where he says that everyone is urinating in front of it. V'chi Mashtinim B'Fanea Mayavi V'Hatznan Rak B'Fanea Hishtin B'Fanea Girur of Azark Bas Atzoa Harezu Eina B'Tela. He says, but even if people urinate, that should not disqualified from being an actual deity, because there's a Mishnah that says that even if you spit in the face of your statue, or you urinate or defecate in front of it, or throw feces in front of it, that's not enough to nullify it as a deity. So really, Rabbi Gamliel's answer was not legitimate. But Vani Oimer Eina Genuva, but I say that it is legitimate, because Hasam Lefi Shaita Hu Rasa Chaleva Hadar Mefayisla Hacha Kol Shaita V'Shaita Bizilzula Kayama. The difference is that in that Mishnah, sometimes a person would come home, he had a terrible day, he lost half of the value of his stocks, and everything is going wrong, and therefore he spits at his idolatry, he urinates on his idolatry because he's temporarily upset, but eventually he calms down and he reconciles with his idolatry. That's why spitting or urinating is not enough to nullify it. But here, if people are pishing in front of the Aphrodite every single day, that in itself demonstrates that it's not meant as a deity unto itself. Rabba bar Ula Amar Genufsa Mehacha de Kamerle Ein Omrim Nasa Merchatz Noila Aphrodite Elanasa Aphrodite Noila Merchatz. He says, Rabba bar Ula says the illegitimacy of his response was in these words, where he said that you have to say that the statue is an accessory to the bathhouse, because no one makes a bathhouse as an accessory to Aphrodite. V'chi Amar Nasa Merchatz LaAphrodite Noi Maihavi. So the argument is that what difference does it make? Even if the bathhouse is an accessory to Aphrodite, it still should be okay, because V'atanya ha'omer bayezel lavodas kolchavim kosel lavodas kolchavim lo'omar klum shein hektish lavodas kolchavim. Because the Brisa says that even if you designate an entire structure, a house, a goblet, or any other item as an accessory for idolatry, as long as that's not the way you worship the idolatry, that accessory does not become prohibited. So that's why his argument was not legitimate. It shouldn't make a difference whether the bathhouse is an accessory to Aphrodite or Aphrodite is an accessory to bathhouse. It should always be okay. But Vani Omer Eina Genuva Nehi Deitzri Lo Mitzra Noi Miha Ika. But I argue that it is a legitimate answer, because if indeed the bathhouse was set up as an accessory for the Aphrodite deity, granted it would not be usher to swim in the swimming pool, but every time a person would swim there, he would in a sense be paying tribute or homage to the idolatry. Like Rashi says in the last Rashi, if bathing in front of an idolatry is a way of paying tribute to it, so then it would be usher to bathe, not because you're benefiting from idolatry, but rather because you're demonstrating tribute to the idolatry. And therefore you have to conclude that the Aphrodite is an accessory to the bathhouse, so just by taking a bath you're not paying tribute to the idol, because the idol is there as an accessory to the bathhouse. It's ancillary to the bathhouse and not the other way around. And this is where we'll hold it for today. Wish you a meaningful tainus.